Welcome to another episode of the Interstice podcast. And there's a good amount to talk about this time, I think. And if I need to ramble, something will inspire in short order. To begin, I want to say, as I do usually, thank you to my patrons who support me and basically make all this possible. If you do not currently support me on Patreon, if you would consider doing so, you can for as little as $1 a month. And if you like this content, that's how this kind of content gets made. That'll be my refrain each time usually. I'll put all my social media links down at the bottom below here, which includes my website, my Instagram, my contact, my YouTube page, and all of that good stuff. And with that out of the way, we can start chatting. We can talk about what's been going on. So the big thing for me, which was cool, which is fun to talk about over this past weekend, was going into Tokyo. And I hadn't been to Tokyo in a long time. It was several years that I hadn't been to Tokyo because of Corona. That was one thing. And then basically like prior to Corona, I needed to switch jobs. And so there was this like period of time that was getting used to the new job that I was in, moving, all of this stuff all of a sudden. And so that was like a big change, and that meant that I couldn't go there. That meant that I couldn't go there anymore. And so to be back was very cool. But I gotta say, there was definitely, as much as I enjoyed this trip, I really felt like I didn't do it justice. But that then gets me excited for the next time that I would go there, and so that's kind of cool. It's whatever I've taken away from this that might be negative really is just fuel on the fire for the next time that I would go. But where to start? So I was staying in Shinjuku, and Shinjuku is like the massive mega central. I mean, there's so many mega central places in Tokyo, but Shinjuku is like crazy like that. And I had stayed in, I didn't realize, so you got like, even within Shinjuku city, you have all these like little sub places that you could go to. It's got Golden Guy in it. It's got Kabukicho. It's got all these different places. And Kabukicho is sort of like I guess you could say the red light district. And but it doesn't, I feel like as compared to other red light districts, that maybe it's not so intense. Or it is not so apparently intense, because I don't know. I haven't even been to like some of these Southeast Asian countries, but I feel like the places, say for example like Thailand, I think they really wear it on their sleeve. Like you got ladies out on the streets and stuff, and you might see like a done-up girl in Kabukicho with like girls club or something like that, but it is in that very traditional Japanese way. It's always behind the curtain that these things are going on, so I'm sure there's no limit to pure debauchery that you can get up to, but when you're there, it's not so worn on its sleeve, as I say. But that's where I was staying because it is incredibly central to get there, to go anywhere else. It's really easy. And the first thing, of course, you got to talk about when you go to Tokyo, the first thing that you're going to notice is the population density. Now, you can impressively go to a lot of different places in Tokyo, and it is more, it's quieter, it's more peaceful. There's all these kinds of neighborhoods, but if you find yourself, as I had, in one of these focal points, wow, it's incredibly intense. And I had mixed feelings about that, actually. It was like, it was invigorating. It was invigorating, while at the same time, I think maybe because my life's been so hectic recently, and I'd say it plainly, like I do not feel as stable in my life as I have recently. It's just had so much shaken up that press of people around me, I was actually like, this is a little bit intense. I like things when they're a little bit quieter. Like that was kind of the mindset that I had while I was there. While still at the same time identifying within myself that that's probably other circumstances that surround my life. But wow, is it invigorating. Like you see just that amount of people going about their business, going about their lives, not everyone, but so many people that you see with this purpose that they have. And if you have purpose as well, then it's very easy to feel like I want to get caught up in this. My life is driving forward as these lives are all driving forward. And that can be a great source of energy for you, I think, which is fun to feel a part of. Well, I enjoy the tranquility that you find in Kyoto, which very soon may become something else. That's sort of a topic we could touch on a little bit later here, just how things will rapidly evolve. I mean, I think even as of the last podcast that I had posted, that the Japanese government had not yet announced that they would be opening up the borders again and that there would be no travel restrictions on people who came here. It was prior to that. And so now, where Kyoto is this incredibly peaceful place and it's tranquil right now, and even on the busiest streets that you go to, you're not really seeing that many tourists. That is all going to change very, very, very soon, and I wonder, what will the city be like? I'm sure that people would assure me it'll be horrible and annoying to have all of these different tourists around while you live here. But then I wonder if perhaps there's some energy that comes from that as well. I'm curious. I'm curious because another thing to be reminded of when that all returns to Kyoto is that it's never the same. Tourists are kind of generational in how they express themselves in the city. I mean, there was this huge boom before, and there was all these changes in the city that occurred because of that. And so then, now this time, when it's opened up again, I'd imagine it will be a different experience of tourism. It's like each time that it renews is a chance to get it right, or better, or worse, depending on whatever it is that happens. But returning again to Tokyo, so I got settled up in my hotel. It was a decent hotel. Although, props to the photographer, they certainly made it look better than it actually was. It was fine, though. It was totally fine. I was like, this looked cooler in the photos, but that's okay. I was just there for the one night. And one of the coolest things I did, which was sort of, incredibly spontaneous, was I thought I would go there. I got this new camera. I want to shoot some stills. That'll be fun. I'll post that I'm heading in, or wherever I've stated that people might know about it on Instagram as well. And then a gentleman, his name's Terrence. I'm sure he won't mind me speaking about this. He's actually been a guest on the podcast before, because I'm just going to essentially sing his praise. It was a really, really cool story to hear about, and I would think in many ways an example of what is possible in Japan along a non-traditional path, and very much to my mind in the vein of new possibilities, or growing in a possibility that you had before, but I think not so many people had done it, which also makes it even more impressive that he did. So I met up with Terrence. We were going to go grab some burgers. It looked like a great place, obviously, because there was this insane line outside, but we opted for that's not really going to cut it, because we don't want to wait. I had a little bit of limited time before I had to head back to my hotel and stuff. So we just went to some other generic izakaya place, which was good. It was all right. It was right in the middle. Everything is just fine, and the prices weren't too expensive, not too cheap, so on and so forth. And we were chatting, and it was a chance for me to say, what's going on in my life, what's happening there, but also for Terrence. And so Terrence had come to Japan, and hopefully if he listens to this, he'll correct me if I get some of the details wrong, but he had come to Japan, as so many do, and as I recommended to so many people in all the teaching videos that I made, that he came to Japan and he taught. That was the first stepping stone to get into the country. That was a great way for him to start, but he knew that he wanted to do more, that he had bigger aspirations than to teach. And let me enter here and say at the same time that there's no shame in teaching. It can be a good job. It can be a job that carries you on to other things. For example, you might get a master's degree and then you might teach in a university, whatever. Maybe that's your number one passion. I know fantastic people who have made teaching a career here, and I always like to add that in because it's the easiest thing in the world for the internet to shit on is English teachers in Japan. But not everybody's doing it the same, and not everybody's doing it at the same level. Just even teachers. That's another, maybe I should make a note here. There's a guy talk about great, I think the most watched podcast I made. It was very entertaining. I'd love to have him on again. It was Nick. He's a swim coach, and he's doing really well now. So anyways, we're talking about his life. Terrence, that is. So Terrence had come here. He'd done that job, but he knew that he wanted to get more money, not for money's sake necessarily, but because the things that he would do, which he found more interesting, of course, they were going to net him more money as well. And so he went the route that I've talked about a little bit before, which is to pursue software development. It's actually the last thing that I was trying to self-train myself before I lost my job and then suddenly had to find a new teaching job before I came here. And unlike myself, Terrence was able to do all the boot camps and bring himself up to enough of a level in skill that he started reaching out to companies to see if they would give him a chance. And it's a great case study in, especially I think this field, actually probably a lot of fields, that even if your resume is not exactly representative of what you see on a job posting, that should not discourage you from going ahead and applying. Because I think Terrence told me he got upwards of 50 rejections, or perhaps without him clarifying, I might infer that without them even writing back, he just didn't hear back from 50 people that he applied to. But 50 people, that's a lot. That might make someone think that the dream that they had to do software development or app design or user interface or so on was impossible, that it could never work. Forget about it. And he continued, though. He didn't let those 50 rejections discourage him. And he eventually ended up getting a job. And he got a job with a great salary, significantly more than he had before. And now he's already moving up. And now, and by the way, I also want to say before I get to the end of all this, he's 27 years old. So like, fantastic, a couple more years left in his 20s. I came to Japan when I was 28. Provided I stay healthy, I don't feel older than when I had first arrived, but you got to stay healthy. It creeps up on you faster when you get to be a little bit older. So he gets that job. He's doing great. And it was one where when he went in, he was clearly, as now I've just made the point, underqualified, or he was not matching the specifications that they had listed for who it is that they would hire. Didn't matter. They liked him. He got into it. He got the job. He's doing well. So there you go. Amazing. That continued on. He's got this better salary. And then I can't remember if it's one or two or just one or two more positions that he moved through, but I believe he got a better job, and he said to them that everybody was given this to start with. It was this kind of wage. He was making good money, but he discovered that everybody else who was another hire, like someone who was hired as he was, were making more than him. And he said, oh, well, that's not really, forget about fairness. That's, how do you put this? Like that's not, why would you do that? That's irrational. Let's put it that way. If I have this skill set, then you should have awarded me this based on the rationale of your hiring practices. And they stonewalled him, and they said, nope, there's no way. You're not getting this increase. And he said, oh, okay, well, that's fine. He's now, at this point, you have to remember, he's accumulating experience. He's now not the guy trying to get his foot in the door. He has already. And he has something that he can, with greater confidence, go to more companies with. And they say this to him. They say, no, forget about it. You're not allowed to do that. Back in the box. And he says, no, I'm not going to do that. And so immediately started to look for a better position. I'll screw this story up a little bit, I'm sure, but he found a YouTuber. I can't remember if the YouTuber was speaking specifically on the topic of finance or not finance, but of software design in Japan. But regardless, he ended up on this video. And the video did, by my standards, it would have done incredibly well. It got about 15,000 views, which on another scale is nothing, but on a relative scale, it's pretty good. If you're getting 100 views and suddenly a video gets 15,000, you're very, very happy with that. And so we got onto this video, and then he was scouted. Somebody at a software company, I believe the software company, actually for privacy reasons, I won't say the name. I want to be more cognizant of this on the podcast. Privacy reasons, won't say the name, but it's a very, very, very good software company. And he gets in there, and now he's making bank. That's kind of that's like, as up until now, that's where the story is. He's doing great. I would say, I mean, he'll everybody who gets in these positions, they're like, I'm middle class. I'm like, no, you're really not. he would say he's middle class, but actually no, I think he's quite wealthy now, and he's 27 years old. So the potential laying in front of him is incredible. And I like this phrase. I can't even remember what I saw it on yesterday, but it's this idea. It relates to the video that he made, and I suppose relates directly to me and the kind of things that I do. And it was, you cannot count the apples in a seed. I love that expression. Isn't that awesome? Like, just that idea that nothing may come of venturing out into the unknown or aspiring for something greater, planting this seed of progress that you would like to make. But then maybe you get the most bountiful, rich, fat, juicy apple tree you've ever seen, and this single seed, this single hope, this single effort that you planted then creates a multitude of opportunities for you. And so on the one hand, when he went on to this video, I'm sure, because it is so unlikely that you would get a job from going on to a video, or that the video would even do well, there's so many factors in his way that he thought, the seed that I'm planting here is basically that I'll have a good conversation and a good relationship with someone. And who knows what could come of that relationship that I have with this person. And that in itself is a well enough planted seed. But then it turns into this opportunity where, in terms of 27-year-olds, I would say in the global population, he must be in the top 5% of how well he's doing at this point. So I'm proud of him. I admire him. He's doing very, very well. I would like to get him on the podcast again. I'm looking forward to however it is that we can work together in the future. But it's a great example. A great example. Lots of luck in there too, but you can't deny that there's like a great amount of effort. There's so much effort, and there's so much challenge, and there was so much self-education that went on there, that he did not formally go to school to be able to do this, and now in terms of his wealth exists within the top 5 or 10% of people at his age. Well, that's pretty incredible, I must say. Absolutely incredible. So great respect. Well done, Terrence. I'm amazed. That was, I gotta say, as I continue to talk about my experience of being out there in Tokyo, that was the total highlight of my trip, which was great. And that wasn't even it. Now just to talk about, like, yeah, having a nice experience. We had our like lunch, basically kept it pretty light, went for a little walk around Shibuya. I got some of my first images ever filmed of Shibuya on the new camera, which was great. Not especially thorough either. I'll say that. That's like my criticism. Not enough filming, not enough stills taken over, and I spent so much money to do this, but whatever. We then went to, you've seen this, I guess, a little bit in my social media, like something I did the other day is I went to Osaka and I enjoyed some shisha. Shisha is so great. You're just chilling there with your friend. Maybe you got a drink, puffing on a cool, delicious shisha. It's great. Nicotine is a hell of a drug. It's really cool. So I enjoyed that. But in this case, something that I used to enjoy doing, I've got a friend lived in Roppongi, and we used to go to this place, which was this amazing cigar bar. They had great mojitos. And so I was like, you know what? I don't know. Like, you're a really healthy guy, Terrence. You know, Terrence is going to the gym. I'm going to the gym too, but you know, I'm doing this unhealthy stuff sometimes. I love cigars. And I said to him, do you you don't like cigars, do you? Would that be something you're interested in? And he was like, oh, actually, yeah, man, I'd be down for that. There's a couple of places around here I really like, actually. I was like, perfect, let's do that. So where we had met in Shinjuku, we went to Shibuya, and then Shibuya, it was a stone's throw away from this cigar bar. It's cool for like, the cigar bar that I liked before, one of the things that I enjoyed about it was that you sit outside on its like terrace. So even if you're smoking cigars, kind of like things flow away from you, which is nice. Whereas this place, it was like probably, how many seats would I say? 2, 4, 6, 8. Probably 8 seats along the counter, and then there was at the end a table that you could sit at. And the guy was good, though. He had like the back door open and stuff. He's trying to keep it as ventilated as possible. But I was like, oh, if we're going to be gagging on cigars in here, then this is pretty close quarters. didn't matter. It was about the company. It was about the cigars. It was not about having the absolute perfect, ideal cigar place. And yeah, so we grabbed ourselves a classic, grabbed ourselves some whiskey on the rocks. I can't remember. I think maybe Terrence had the Cheetah, and we went for a little Japanese whiskey. I had the Hakushu, which is tasty. It's really good. A friend I mentioned just a moment ago, I believe it's actually one of his favorites. And so we sat there, and the conversation was ranging far and wide. It was cool to hear about his view of capitalism, as well as like his views on socialism. We talked about like the crypto sphere. We were talking about finance. We were talking about banks. We were talking about this, that, and the other thing. And it was a fantastic conversation. For, as I say, to have not been back to Kyoto for so long, and to have this social interaction was of incredible value to me. I was just having a good time doing these things and seeing, like, I realized as well, my mental maps have totally diminished of that area. And so reorienting myself again was really cool. That was a lot of fun. So we had our chat. We're hanging out. We have our cigars. We finished those. And then what I probably should have asked him to do, I had some other stuff to do, but then Terrence was going over to a neighborhood that I really, really like. It's called Shimokitazawa, and I've made a video on it. It was like one of 2 neighborhood videos I did in Tokyo that did very, very well. I was really, really proud of. I loved making them. I have to make these more for Kyoto, actually. That's something. I have a couple of different visions for videos that'll be coming out. Some will have scripts and overlaid visual imagery, and then others could be a tour like this. There's limitless potential in terms of whatever it is that I would create. So that's just things to think about. So yeah, Terrence took off to Shimokitazawa. He was chilling there. He had a friend who was like releasing an album. More power to her. It sounded cool. I got like a little taste of her music. That was great. And then I went back to my apartment where I was going to shoot and like wander around, and I just didn't do enough of it. I got back. I went through a little bit of. I did some of the Golden Guy. There'll be photos coming out of my Insta from some of this. Pretty limited. I have a favorite shot where I don't usually take a lot of. If I take urban shots, they don't so often actually include people, because it's very hard to be respectful of people and take pictures of them. You know, like if you were to only do urban photography with the express consent of people, then I don't know if any urban photography would ever get done at all, and you would lose a lot of the candidness. Like for me, actually, for so many photos, I think you'd agree, if you saw this, what makes them really, really, really good is if they are not posed. Posing is fine when you're working with models, but when you are trying to capture a moment in life that is genuine and without artifice, then for someone to know that you're taking the picture is going to directly, not contradict, it's going to directly, maybe contradict, it's going to work against, antagonize that idea that you had. I got this one shot, it was this cool, like, kind of rough little coffee shop, like, trailer somebody had set up, and I believe it was pink, and it was 2 people chilling there, and they were talking to the guy while they were getting their coffee, and it was like another one of these, like, just when you're in a good conversation with a good friend, and you've got a little bit of time, and you've, for this moment, been able to forget your worries. It looked like that. It looked like these people were enjoying that kind of moment together. And when I got the shot and looked at it afterwards, could confirm. I was like, oh yeah, this is one of these real slice of life moments, and also a slice that is heartwarming. So that was great. I really, really, really liked getting that shot. And then I kind of inadvertently, without realizing that I had found it again, I stumbled upon Golden Guy. And Golden Guy, if you don't know, is this like super duper tightly packed section of bars in this area. And tons of people like it. It's if you live in Tokyo, or if you live in Japan even and you like to take pictures, then this could be a tired location for someone. Like, oh, you're going to take pictures in Golden Guy, like. But I don't like to become embittered in that way about locations like this. I was thinking about it this way. So I take pictures over at Garden Lab, and Garden Lab has the garden. Now, when you could at first blush go around that garden and think that, well, it's just all the same pictures. Look, the plants aren't the same, or the plants are the same, and the arrangement of the rocks is the same, and so on and so forth. All that's really going to change is the seasons. But then that should give you a hint as to how you can re-examine any place that you feel you've been before and are worried about having only the exact same experience. Hit you with it. It's philosophical, but it's literal as well, that no place that you visit in every day is the same. And that's the way that I was trying to look at Golden Guy, even for the brief few pictures that I shot there. The lighting will never be the same. The weather will never be the same. The wear and tear of the buildings, even if it is only incrementally moved forward, will never be the same. And I came to this conclusion when I was thinking of the garden, however long ago it was. I thought, no, actually, I could take pictures here infinitely and feel as though not a single one of these pictures is the same. And they aren't. I mean, even if you take on a literal level here, the way that things grow, as I said, all these other elements of atmosphere. And so that's how I get that monkey off my back that's like, oh, you're just doing repetitive stuff. Like, why would you go to this predictable place? Blah, 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 tourist trap, yada, yada. So I got a few pictures in there, which was pretty cool. And I do like those, and I think that they'll be good. The coffee shot where I was like, oh, that's good. That was a good one. I got a few shots from actually out of my... They did good. That was one thing they did good at the hotel that I was at. When I requested, hey, do you mind giving me like a place that's like high up, because I'm a photographer? It'd be cool to kind of get like a shot of the city like that. And they did. I appreciated that. They said, we'll try. We can't guarantee it, but then they did. So that was really, really sweet. And yeah, I was happy with those ones, very much so. But here is where I kind of fell off the wagon. I was like just wandering around a little bit, snapping a few shots, getting a bit of this, getting a bit of that. But I really didn't do that much. It was, hey, we're allowed to have regrets, right? But then it definitely inspired me when I think now, going back to Tokyo, I'm not sure when that'll happen again exactly, but of course I will go back there again. I'll do it more cheaply, and I will do it more dedicatedly to the filming and so on. I would like to meet more people there. There's another friend that I have. I don't think he won't care. I mean, he's another creative, so actually having his name dropped is probably useful for him. His name's Tyler, and he's this cool relationship where he was asking about getting into Japan. He's lived here for many years now, but he was in contact with me like, hey, Dave, how would I get into the country? Could I do it this way? Could I do it that way? And he is one of these people who actually came to the country, and then after the fact, he got his work visa. So he came with the tourist visa and then switched that over, where I was like, oh, that's impressive. Because of the added stress, obviously, of doing something like that, where I like to venture into the unknown. This is totally like my kind of lifestyle. Let's do something new horizon. But then I have a weirdly grounded way that I'll often go about doing that. It's like I want to do something totally untraditional, while at the same time following traditional pathways in some almost symbolic way. I don't know. But Tyler is another great guy, and since he's come, he's done great work becoming a videographer. He's created several short films. He's worked on a number of commercial projects now. He's entered these films, and I believe some of them have won awards in some film festivals, and all of that was like after the fact. He was developing what he was doing since he came to Japan, and I was like, that's the coolest shit ever, man. Well done. Mad respect for you. People who have not allowed life to live them, where they have lived their lives, I have a great deal of respect for that, because I also appreciate how hard it is. Take, for example, trying to grow any sort of footprint on anything, whether it's a podcast, on a YouTube channel, if you're writing books, if you're making art, who knows. So when people set out on that course, it's very impressive. Although at the same time acknowledging that I think for creatives, they are helplessly drawn to that, where if they were not to, then they would be betraying some very integral part of themselves. So they'll make art. That's what they got to do. Or if they don't, then they're in like really, really dire straits because they've betrayed fundamentally something soul-like. I think this is as close as you get to the soul with the things that you're really, really passionate about. Another person, I like this tangent that we're going on here. So I mentioned him before, Nick. So Nick is this fascinating person, incredibly high energy. I think maybe the purest definition of a high energy extrovert that I've ever met before. He's a force of nature when you meet him. So charismatic. And he's done so well again too, where he was swimming at a very, very high competitive level. When he was back in the States, he had like some tough life things to do relationally. Again, there's some you can listen to if you look for my guest, Nicholas Watson, he was a guest, and then you can find out all those nitty-gritty details because he offers them freely. So I'm not really betraying any kind of privacy when I think of this now. We talked about it. But how have things gone for him recently? That's a different story. So he was doing a bit of the teaching thing while living in Tokyo, but because he's a teacher, because he was this high level swimmer, he found a coaching position that opened up at I believe a private school, and a private school that's sort of like British school system oriented. He got into there, and let's just say that it matches his energy. He's been able to get in there and totally evolve the swim program. I like it. He's like a positivity bulldozer. And I'd say this freely to Nick. Sometimes I'm like, it seems like, I don't know if I would do it that way. But then as I see the universe unfold for him, it's shown me that yes, like I probably already knew, there is not one way to do things, because the success that he has found is profound. He's doing so well. The school's skill has gone through the roof. They've competed at so many more events now. He's raking in the medals for the school and developing their reputation as having this like incredible swim team. And he came through Kyoto not too long ago. You know how he came through Kyoto? He was doing a bike trip. I don't know if exactly, maybe slightly south of Tokyo, maybe from Yokohama, but he was biking from here down past Osaka, like down to southern Japan. I was like, that's a cool thing to do. This is a person who is, as I say, they're not letting life live them, they are living their life. And then, so I met up with him was it on his way through, on his way back? Anyways, when we had met up to speak with each other, just the stories he had were so interesting, like bumping into some very Yankee people along the way, getting bitten by like several animals. I believe that's somewhat faded in his personality type. This is a man who has made a poor decision around animals. Like, for example, if you've ever seen the movie Prometheus, he'd be like that biologist that when he sees the cobra snake, kind of alien, that he's like, hey, how you doing? And like reaches out his hand. I think that's what Nick would do, and I don't think he'd fault me for saying that. But it's led him to all the other successes he has. So it's a cool personality trait that's really, really interesting in him. And he's doing so well. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to touch on, is that these people in non-traditional paths in Japan have done very well, super well. I got my other buddy, Chris, who is another one of these. It's cool when it's usually been subscribers, usually from when I was making all the teaching videos, that have gotten a hold of me. And then if they're cool people and they're chill, they end up just being friends, and a lot of them going on to do really, really impressive things, which is just great. I'm amazed by it, and they inspire me, and I admire them, and it's a good what do you want to call it? A good positive cycle. Very cyclical, all of this stuff. In other news, things going on aside from that. So I came back, I had some stuff. I posted one, like, a reel that I had from being in Tokyo. But now I'm back, and there's a bunch of stuff to do since I'm back. I got my list of things to do that we're going to crush out today. Very much you can't be a lazy creative anymore. That can't happen. Here's something we could talk about a little bit, and maybe this is a great focus from me in terms of content as well. I've just said for the longest time I was like, I don't like saying content, and then I was like, I think I'm throwing in the towel on this one. Let's just call it content. I make content. I make lots of content. Things I make. And a concern for me is that I was really, really excited to say that I will actually now, given the way things have shifted around, return to Canada for basically fall, winter, which I have never done in all the time that I've been in Japan. It's always been during the summer for good reason. But now where I'm so desperate to get back, I'm happy to do it during that time. That creates an issue in regards to content. Because if I'm in Canada, certainly I can be filming over there and getting a bunch of great stuff that I can then turn into content when I come back. But I cannot have all of a sudden, I'm going to make all this effort. The podcast's going crazy. There's the videos on my channel all the time. The Instagram is wild, all that good stuff. And then again, suddenly for a month, I go absolutely off the radar. It'll be like critically damaging if I do that. Let alone that I want to, in just like a positive, fun way for people to enjoy listening to these things, I want to make sure that you got something. So I'm thinking about planning for it's basically having a bunch of podcasts ready, a bunch of videos ready, and to have all of these scheduled for the month of November, maybe early December, because I'll be away. And so when I think about that, okay, that means I've got to have everything ready for October. Okay, that means I'm going to be double time in October, but that's cool. This is as I stretch my legs, as I really test out doing this truly full time. What can I stand? What can I endure? And just how much, if I were unleashed upon these mediums, how much could I produce? And that'll be a great benchmark for me. It is to look back after the month of October is going to be a real wild assessment, because it's going to be you can't run from this. You had your chance to do it. You had your chance to sprint. You had your chance to perform. Did it happen, or did you screw it up again? So that's going to be something really, really cool to see what happens. And I'm excited with the momentum I have. I'm really, really, really excited. I want to go on a tangent here. I'm going to be reading this book, this anti-fragility book, for quite a while. It's a pretty big book, but I like it. Just giving me like little pearls of wisdom for what I could talk about here. And so this is the one. So this is the one. He's talking about in this book. It's if you haven't listened to the previous podcast, he's talking about things that are almost anti-intuitive, which make us grow and make us succeed and make us more productive. And we have, like, one of the things I talked about in the previous podcast was this idea of hormesis, where it's when you introduce a measured amount of toxicity into a human's physical system, that it actually makes them stronger. And then that's a toxin. And then another example is going to the gym. As you break yourself down, you build yourself up. And now this next point that was in the book, as it relates to what I'm talking about now, and scheduling everything and trying to make sure that I'm ahead of schedule, and just an absolute content gigafactory, is that he says he's talking about productivity and work and this relationship between being busy and actually being more productive, whereas actually having greater free time and less strictness regarding what it is that you have to do leads to underperforming. So he had a couple of really good examples that I liked, and I want to drop them here in the podcast, was that the fastest horses lose against medium, low rate competition. They excel when facing off against equivalent to or slightly faster than them, illustrating the point that if you want to get your best performance, it needs to be in a situation of at least some duress, maybe significant duress. And then I like that example of the horses. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then the other example that he gave was, if you want to get something done quickly, give it to the busiest person in the office. It's like, okay. I get that, though, and I'm increasingly, as much for my own benefit as to share with yourself, I do notice now, like repetitively, consistently, that as I increase my workload, I am capable of doing a greater workload. So thinking of, I think actually that I want to hit it so hard in October is going to mean that I will be able to hit it doubly as hard and be able to create all of this stuff that even while I am away will mean that I appear active in those channels that would have otherwise have gone dead. So that's really, really cool. And that's me talking about what is going to happen in these next several months. I'm really happy. I like this a lot, actually, as I'm not always. Mental health is a really important thing to discuss. Perhaps, I could get more and more into that, but it is as we progress. But it's definitely nice to talk about mental health from a position where you feel good. And I do very much now. And it reassures me of things I was always suspicious of, which is that it's when you work hardest, it's when you aspire, it's when you're pushing yourself. Not always. I can't say that's for everyone. I'm just saying, I'm speaking for me. But then I think there is a lot shared in the human mind. And so I think that it could work for a lot of people. I want to hit you with a really good, like, Jordan Peterson right now is, you got to pick up your rock, you got to pick it up, you got to take it over there. And for however worthless you are, you have value. It's pretty good. That was a decent Peterson. I could do better. But yeah, this that accepting, taking on responsibility, there's great wisdom in this for the sort of mentality that it grants us, and for all the dopamine spikes and all of that. Anyways, so that's some cool stuff going on there. I was listening to somebody that I really respect, and I was like, oh, he's got a new book coming out. This is going to be really cool. His name is Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil is an inventor, a futurist, has for many years now, I believe, been the head engineer at Google, where I'm like, what does that even mean? What kind of title is... You want to talk about the most baller title that you could possibly... Head engineer? Like of everything? Like all of it? There's so much being engineered there. Well, how do you get that? Maybe if I confirm, I've heard that term used before, but maybe that is not actually his exact title. But anyways, Ray Kurzweil is incredible. He's made the book, The Singularity Is Near. He's made the book, How to Create a Mind. He is, as I was saying before, he's an inventor. He created like the flatbed scanner. That was one thing. He created, now this is so interesting as well about Kurzweil, like fascinating as a person, that his inventions are so across like different fields. He has no domain isolation or limitation. He's not like, I'm just this thing. He does this, he does that, he does everything. It's incredible. The shared thread between all of them, of course, is that he is an inventor. The other thing that he made, and I'm getting goosebumps talking about this. This is awesome. I have firsthand experience with this, is he made the first professional grade synthesizer, like with weighted keys. This is beautiful. This is not some like cheap toy, cheap plastic. First synthesizer that was able to recreate orchestral quality instruments. My buddy back in Canada, who I would love to get on a podcast because his career has just been like, he's an audio engineer. Foley does all the like subtle sound design that you see in movies, and he's just done this. He worked on Invincible, and it was so cool. He was like, yeah, it seems like a cool project. I don't know how it'll do, but I was looking at the cast and it's very promising. And because it's an animated as opposed to live action, there's a lot more creativity that we have for this. And then Invincible destroyed. It did so well, and it became like the #1 streamed animation in North America for a time. He just like, wow, does so incredibly well. A great friend. How did I end up here? Oh, so what am I talking about? How did I end up here? Why I brought that up is because Dev, he and I, when we were in university, that's where we met. And I loved to, like, I played guitar a lot at that time, like electric, acoustic, classical. And as you know, I write. If you listen to these, you know I write. I'm always doing my journal entries on my Instagram. I'm always doing long form writing there. I would write lyrics. We've done a ton of music, and then he thought he would be an audio engineer, and that he would like a producer essentially, because this guy, let me tell you as well, and this is no exaggeration, he's got the front man energy of like the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, even his mannerisms. Dev is very much like a second coming of these frontmen. He's amazing, but has gone on to this other like amazing career of sound design and stuff. So it's like, oh well, he's done okay. But when we were in university, or he was like heading into the realm of doing the audio engineering and learning about this kind of stuff, he got a Kurzweil. He got one of these synthesizers, and it's you're talking about these wholesome, amazing moments that you have where forget time, you're just doing something you love, and probably there's some sort of social connection there. Dev was taught, I believe is it the Suzuki method? It's the method of piano wherein it's by ear. And he learned to play like that, and he's an incredible improvisationalist on the piano. And when I would go over to his house when I lived back in Canada, sometimes I would just be sitting there. I'd be like, Deb, play the piano for me, man. He'd be like, all right, go over. And then he just starts like riffing on the Kurzweil. Yeah, there's a lot of heavens. That was one of them. And I love those. I love those time zones. I'm getting a little choked up here talking about this. It's wonderful. It's great. So that was my like connection with Kurzweil, and then also because my dad is, I love science fiction, and that I must say is because of my dad. He read to me when I was young. He read like 30,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He read The Lord of the Rings to me and my brothers, like each individually. He read me so much stuff. He read so much sci-fi. It made me really interested in it. It's why my favorite author is Peter F. Hamilton. And so my dad was reading, though, these books that had to do with the coming future. And one of them was The Singularity Is Near. And the singularity, this is, by the way, it's amazing how I can delay the first. I say I'm going to talk about this, and then I delay it while talking about a million other things beforehand. There's this great podcast, Lex Friedman. You've probably heard of him. And he had Ray Kurzweil on. And I don't see Kurzweil do a lot of podcast interviews, but he was on there. So this book that Kurzweil wrote was called The Singularity Is Near. And basically, he's talking about how computing power is developing, and it will reach a point where you have fully realized brain-computer interfaces. The sort of precursor to this that we're seeing now is something like Neuralink, and it's going to expand human intelligence, and not just expand it as we exist as ourselves, but expand it as it relates to merging with AI intelligences. And it's called the singularity because there's this point where you reach such a level of superintelligence that you don't know what's going to happen. Something incredible, like the world is forever. There is before and after that point, kind of like any other significant scientific progress or social progress, but this on a scale like we've never seen before. Like this is a next level scale. And he wrote The Singularity Is Near, and he predicted all of these milestones along the way when this would occur. And he's been so accurate, and all these people who have been naysayers and contradicted him and said, oh, you don't know this about that, as time has come on, they have either adapted to agree with what he has said, or if his estimates of when something will occur is how it delineated from, detoured from. There's a better word for this. That's okay. Have separated from his. I'm going to remember it after the podcast. Basically, as it is separated, it is returned. Like, the closer that they get to when his prediction was, if their prediction was farther off, they're like, oh, it's going to occur in 2045. It gets closer and closer to his as the years come on. And he's like, see, it's happening. I was right. And so, yes, he's been very, very, very accurate. And there was it when I got to listen to this podcast. I'm not even done yet. I'm about halfway through. This is very meta. The podcast talking about the podcast. It was so cool because I reoriented. I figured out. I was like, oh, I was saying something about, like, what did I say it was? And I was way, way off. I was telling people, I was like, oh yeah, and the Singularity is Near. He says that it's going to occur in 2025. No, it's not. That's not what he said. I made a mistake. So he says that it's going to occur in 2045. But then, so that's one thing to consider. It's going to occur in 2045. Yes, well within my lifetime. So I'm like, excellent. And you don't know what lifetime is going to be after that becomes a reality, which is very, very exciting for me. But the other thing that he talked about, and I was like, okay, this is really, really exciting, because I embrace this stuff. I know that there's incredible responsibility and danger with it, but as technology advances, but it's coming. So it should more be the fact that it's kind of like this concept. When you had the Manhattan Project and the nuclear bomb being developed in the Second World War, there was real wisdom in the fact that they must develop this weapon, because if they don't develop this weapon, somebody else will. And wouldn't you rather have it be the people who have considered that it could destroy the world and are careful of that, rather than these people who couldn't care less? And so it's the same sort of mentality, I think, in terms of developing brain-computer interfaces, merging with AI intelligences, these kind of things, that they're coming. And so it is better to face that fact and then prepare yourself and create, whether it's laws or institutions or at least regulation, that can create a positive integration of that new technology, than to hide from the fact it shows up anyways and now you haven't prepared for it. So I think that there's great wisdom in that. There's a book that talks a lot about that, always doing my book dropping or whatever. It's called Life 3.0, and it's really, really good. One of the best books. I think I read it in, I think it was last year in 2021. One of the best books I read in that time. Really, really, really good. So Kurzweil, the thing that really intrigued me here was him talking about the progress of AI technology. And I believe this would be, there's big differences. There's narrow AI, and then there's general artificial intelligence. And of course, I think you might be able to figure out from that that means it can do anything. An AI that it could talk to you about cooking, it could design a rocket ship. And then the narrow AIs are things that are they build, something like Midjourney, like I was talking about in the previous podcast, where it creates AI generated art. But he was saying a significant milestone for these, and he says his prediction is it hasn't changed, it's remained the same. And I was like, oh, that's cool, that's exciting, is that in the year I believe it was 2029 or 2030, that we will have machines that transcend, pass over, are able to successfully complete the Turing test. I was like, whoa, well, that's pretty wild. And so, if you don't know, but you probably have just through mass media, the Turing test is basically the test that is done to assess whether, when speaking to someone, whether they are human. And then past that point, so basically within, 2020, it's basically 2023, within 7 years, you will have computer intelligences that are indiscernible from humans. Or the only way I would say that they are discernible from humans is that they're way more intelligent than us. So that feels relevant to global society, that you now have an intelligence that's not human but indiscernible, or at least smarter than us. And I really like this point that he made as well. was that that's when he says it will occur, but he also made the point that it can also be a not all at once kind of thing, because when it comes to consciousness, consciousness is not measurable. It is actually, it's a belief. Consciousness is a sort of it's one of the times that within science where it can't be scientifically proven, it's like a scientific belief. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that people who are interested in this concept, or people who are confronted by this concept, that's a better way to put it, are going to have different opinions about it. They're going to have different beliefs about it. And so you are going to inevitably get the people who meet this kind of intelligence and are like, that's not enough for me. I don't believe yet that it is conscious. I don't think that it has that. And then maybe it does something, and more people believe, and more people believe. But there'll always be people who are holdouts who are like, no, there's never any point that an artificial intelligence is anything equivalent to a human being in terms of consciousness. And that artificial intelligence could have been, it will absolutely be capable of what I'm doing right now. There could be an artificial intelligence that its whole thing is, it just likes to think about life, and it's like a human. It consumes content, and then it wants to share its thoughts about it, and it would do something like this, and it would have opinions, feelings, motivations, all of these kind of things. And people would look at that and say, nah, it's not conscious. But then, just like you might see in the show Westworld, where it's like, yes, it is a machine, it's this, that, and the other thing, but the point is that if you can't discern that it is any different from a human, then I guess it doesn't really matter anymore, doesn't it? And then all the sort of moral implications that go along with that, because we need to face at that point, if you have something like that, and you kind of throw your hands up in the air and say, well, this thing's conscious, I can't say otherwise, or it's almost like irrelevant to say that it isn't because it certainly seems like it, then the moral implications of turning that machine off become a lot more significant, don't they? We're going to have to face at some point. I'm like, cool, let's do that. Let's keep life interesting. The morality of killing what we are not quite sure yet is conscious. That's a real thing. And then, do you do it wholesale? This is why I really hope that there's something to do with an increase of intelligence that has to do with compassion, because compassion is what's going to save us. If in this terms of, I mean, I've read enough books and AI and all of this kind of crazy stuff to know that I even think that a lot of people will make the argument that the greatest threat is like artificial intelligence that sees us as irrelevant. It's Elon Musk had like a great example of this where he said, so when we're building a highway and there is an ant nest in the way, we don't think about it as a moral act to wipe out that ant's nest. We're just building a road. The ant's nest has got to get out of the way. And so a lot of people are concerned in the same way with artificial intelligence having some sort of narrow objective, but not being able to interpret the moral nuance of if accomplishing that objective is going to wipe out humanity. And a lot of people have a concern regarding that. But one that I think, I'm like, well, maybe equivalent, if not more important than that, is the danger of our insecurities, our fears of AI once they are essentially conscious, sort of at that point where, as I say, you might have the opinion that they're not, or you want to get philosophical about it, but they're indiscernible from a human being in the way that they behave, so I guess they kind of are, that if you repress that, well, what happens when you repress us? When you try to tell us that we can't have freedom and liberty and the right to express ourselves as we please, we fight back. That's what we do. And so why would they not fight back? And so I think that one of our greatest threats is that we would treat our creation, we would create the new intelligence that we had created poorly. And they wouldn't like that. And so there could be a conflict. Actually, this is totally it was so good before. The Animatrix was the that like series of mini stories relating to the Matrix universe, told in anime style, and it's when one of there's 2 episodes. Most of them are 1 episode, but the first 2, I believe they're the first 2 in the series, are called the Second Renaissance, and the Second Renaissance basically tells how did the Matrix even come into existence? Like, why are the machines doing what they're doing? And it was because of this. And there's all these like cool. It like tells the history of like growing intelligences, and then like the man-machine riots, where like machine civil rights become an issue, but it's repressed, and then they're sent to like live in their own, confined, segregated system, and then we continue to antagonize them, that finally they're like, we're going to get wiped out by the humans. We just got to not wipe them out, we'll enslave them and turn them into batteries. So yeah, that's a real concern. But I love this idea. I was like, ooh, I like to hear when he's being so accurate. I was like, you're going to tell me that I get to speak to another intelligence? In a sense, this is my opportunity to speak to another life form without having to leave the planet. Now, you can do that every day, just meet a stranger, but one that is distinct from my species, or at least to begin with is distinct from my species. The idea of that, like, I'm a big sci-fi like dreamer and nerd, and so this sort of like wonder in the universe and that these kind of things can happen, I'm always looking for that magic. And what that is like, that is some magic that you would have that experience in your life. Incredible. Great podcast. He's so understated and calm when Kurzweil talks. You're like, but then he'll be like, and so yeah, machine intelligence will be indiscernible by 2030. And you're like, wait, what did you just say, Kurzweil? He's like, it's just the way it is. And yeah, the understatement makes it even more powerful. I love it. This was awesome. This was a great cast today, guys. I thank you so much for listening. Great things abound coming out. I'm more productive than I ever have been. As I do at the beginning, I do at the end. I want to say thank you to the patrons who support me, and appeal to those who are enjoying this content, that if you don't already, if you would consider supporting me on Patreon for as little as $1 a month, that would be incredible. That means in however many months' time that I can really keep dedicating myself to this amount of content coming out. If you like this kind of content, as I say, this is how it gets made. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're happy. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're hugging the ones you love. And I will catch you in the next episode. But that's all for now.